In the world of business, what is often called friendship is not friendship at all, but a temporary alliance, a mutual agreement to serve personal interests. It is the mind that seeks security in relationships, not the deeper self. The businessman believes he has friends because others surround him with smiles, praise, and gestures of goodwill. Yet this is only because he holds value in their eyes. The moment his position shifts, his wealth diminishes or his usefulness fades, so too do the so-called friendships. This is not a failure of human nature, but simply its unconscious state. People operate from ego, seeking to benefit from one another rather than connect in a way that is free of conditions. When one builds a life on transactions rather than genuine presence, there is always an underlying fear. Fear of loss, fear of betrayal, fear of becoming irrelevant. This is why the businessman cannot truly relax into friendship, because the foundation is unstable. Even in moments of apparent trust, the mind remains alert, calculating risk, ensuring that the exchange remains favorable. True friendship, however, cannot exist within the framework of calculation. It is beyond need, beyond gain, beyond fear. It does not ask, "What can I get?" but rather, "Who am I beyond this role I play?" Yet the mind clings to labels. This is my friend, this is my ally, this is someone I can trust. But trust based on circumstances is not trust at all. It is a mask worn by self-interest. To see this clearly is not to become cynical, but to awaken from illusion. The businessman, if he dares, can step beyond this illusion. The businessman is not merely a person engaged in commerce. He is an identity constructed by the mind, shaped by ambition, competition, and the need for significance. This identity becomes a fortress built brick by brick with achievements, reputation, and influence. Yet beneath it lies a quiet fear, the fear of being nothing without it. The more one identifies with the role, the more fragile one becomes, because anything that threatens the role threatens the very sense of self. This is why power is so intoxicating. It creates the illusion of permanence, of control, of being beyond vulnerability. But it is just that, an illusion. Friendships formed within this framework are not friendships in the truest sense, but extensions of the identity itself. They serve a function, reinforcing the image of success, offering validation, and maintaining the structure of self-importance. Yet, when the identity is no longer beneficial to others, these connections dissolve. This is not personal, it is simply how the unconscious mind operates. People are drawn not to the essence of another, but to what that person represents in their world. The businessman believes he has power over others, but in truth, he is bound by the same limitations. He is only as respected as his last success, only as valued as his current usefulness. To remain attached to this identity is to live in a constant state of defense. Every interaction becomes a negotiation, every gesture analyzed for hidden motives. The mind, consumed by the need to protect its constructed image, leaves no room for stillness. But stillness is the only space where something real can emerge, something beyond the fragile construct of self. To see this clearly is to begin dissolving the illusion, to recognize that the attachment to power is the very thing that isolates. In the world of business, relationships are often mistaken for friendships, but at their core, they are transactions. Every interaction carries an expectation, a silent agreement that value must be exchanged. The businessman surrounds himself with people, yet each connection is measured, evaluated, and weighed against potential benefit. This is not because he is unkind, but because the nature of business demands it. In a world driven by profit, efficiency, and negotiation, relationships are shaped by necessity rather than authenticity. Even generosity is often strategic, an investment rather than a true offering. There is no true stillness in a transactional relationship. The mind is always at work, calculating whether it is giving too much or receiving too little. The presence of another is not experienced fully because they are seen through the lens of utility. One person may be a partner today, a competitor tomorrow, and irrelevant the day after. Loyalties shift, not because people are deceitful, but because they are bound by the same unconscious drive, the need to secure their own position. There is no real trust in such an environment, only a temporary alignment of interests. The businessman may call someone a friend, but beneath that label there is always a quiet awareness that the friendship exists only as long as it remains mutually beneficial. This way of being creates an undercurrent of isolation, even in the midst of success. The more one depends on transactional relationships, the more one becomes entangled in a web of uncertainty. Nothing feels solid because everything is subject to change. The mind searches for security, but it cannot find it where conditions rule. In the world of business, the mind is constantly planning, calculating, and strategizing. Every decision is weighed against its potential return. Every action is deliberate, crafted to maximize efficiency and ensure success. In this state, presence is often overlooked. The businessman is consumed by thought, not in the present moment, but in projections of the future. His mind moves from one goal to the next, from one task to the next, never pausing to truly experience the moment. In such an environment, the idea of simply being, without agenda, without anticipation, feels foreign. Yet it is in this stillness, this presence, where clarity and true insight emerge. The mind, in its strategic mode, operates out of fear, the fear of losing, of failing, of not achieving. Every decision is driven by the need to control the outcome. This is why presence seems to be in conflict with business. The businessman believes that if he stops to experience the moment, he may lose his edge, fall behind, or miss an opportunity. But in truth, it is the constant state of doing, of reacting, that prevents true growth. Strategic thinking is necessary, but it must be balanced with the awareness of the present moment. Without this balance, the businessman risks losing himself in the endless pursuit of external success. In the midst of the busy life of business, it becomes easy to mistake busyness for productivity. The mind is active, but the body is exhausted. Relationships become strained not because they lack value, but because the mind is not truly present with them. It is consumed by what is yet to come, constantly focused on what needs to be achieved, leaving no space for the depth of connection that can only occur in the present moment. Ambition, when driven by the need for external validation, becomes a force that isolates the businessman from his true self. The pursuit of success, of wealth, and of recognition often demands sacrifice. This sacrifice is not always physical, it is the sacrifice of inner peace, the quiet surrender of the present moment to the endless pursuit of more. The businessman who is constantly chasing success can lose touch with his deeper being, as his identity becomes intertwined with what he has or what he does. The fear of failure, of not measuring up, becomes a constant companion. This ambition feeds the ego, and the ego thrives on comparison, competition, and achievement. In this state, the businessman may feel that he is defined by what he has accomplished and by what others perceive of him. But in this pursuit, the businessman is not truly living, he is merely reacting to the world outside. His actions are motivated by an underlying belief that his worth depends on external circumstances. This belief traps him in a cycle of striving, where success is never enough and fulfillment is always just out of reach. The cost of ambition is not only the neglect of the inner self, but also the loss of genuine relationships. The businessman, focused on his goals, may become disconnected from those around him, unable to offer his full presence. In a world driven by results, there is little room for stillness, for quiet reflection, for simply being. The pursuit of success can blind one to the richness of the moment, leaving the businessman forever seeking, never fully content, and forever isolated from his true essence. True connection, the kind that transcends roles, titles, and positions, is only possible when one is able to step beyond the ego's demands. In the business world, one may have countless interactions, but how many of them are rooted in authentic connection? People come and go, alliances are formed and dissolved, yet true connection remains elusive because it requires the ability to see beyond the surface, beyond the roles people play. When one is trapped in their identity as a businessman, they cannot fully meet others in their essence. The mind constantly filters interactions through a lens of expectation and self-interest, so it becomes nearly impossible to experience the fullness of another person. To experience true connection, one must be willing to release the need for utility, for gain. It requires the capacity to be present, to listen without agenda, to offer oneself without calculation, but this is difficult in a world where every relationship is often viewed through the lens of what can be gained or lost. In business, there is always an exchange, a transaction, but beyond this transactional exchange lies the possibility of something deeper, a connection where both parties are free from expectation, free from the need to perform. True connection happens when one is able to let go of their constructed self and simply be. It happens when one recognizes that the person in front of them is not just a role they play, but a being with their own fears, joys, and struggles. When this recognition occurs, there is no longer a need for the transactional, no longer a need to protect the self. In this space, true friendship can emerge, a friendship that is not based on what is given or received, but on the mutual recognition of each other's humanity. The businessman who clings to the illusion of friendship, power, and success, bound by ego and transactional exchanges, lives in a constant state of unrest. In his pursuit of external validation, he sacrifices the depth of authentic connection and the peace that comes from simply being. Relationships become tools for survival rather than opportunities for true communion. The mind, always planning, calculating, and striving, misses the richness of the present moment, and in doing so, distances itself from the deeper essence of life. Ambition, while necessary in the material world, becomes a barrier when it is fueled by the need for approval and the fear of inadequacy. It feeds the ego and isolates the businessman from his true self and from others. In this pursuit of more, there is always the undercurrent of fear, the fear of losing power, of becoming irrelevant, of not being enough. Yet true success is not found in external accolades or fleeting alliances, but in the quiet recognition of one's essence, beyond roles and titles. The businessman who dares to step beyond the surface, to release his attachment to identity, opens the door to genuine connection, to stillness, and to a life that is not driven by fear, but rooted in presence and authenticity. Only then can he truly experience the fullness of life and the richness of human connection.